All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Patrick Denig. I'm a project manager with Comprise Technologies. This morning, we're going to do an overview training for Smart Money Manager. So what we'll do is I'll take you through the initial login process, and then we'll do some very simple over-the-counter type transactions for merchandise. And then we'll get into paying fines and fees, as well as waves and end-of-day reconciliation, and so on. So if you have any questions, we're going to kind of follow that order. Please feel free to interrupt me if you need to. If it's something that we're going to move on to or cover shortly, then I may just defer the question to that point. But basically, on your screen, on your desktop of your staff computers, there's going to be an icon called Smart Money Manager. It looks like this right here. Okay. Now, I'm actually running this from this test PC here. But when you click on the Smart Money Manager icon, it's going to prompt you to log in. Now, every staff member will have their own unique username and password. I believe the usernames are set up as your first initial and your last name, and the initial default password is just the letter A. The very first time you sign in, it's going to prompt you to create your own password and to also set a security question so that should you forget your password or need to reset it, you'll be able to do that by answering your security question. So I have a test user here that I'm going to use. Okay. So this is the prompt where I'll need to create my own password. There's a password requirement that means that the password needs to be a complex password. A complex password needs to be at least 7 characters, an uppercase letter, a lowercase letter, a number, and a special character. So an example of an acceptable complex password might be capital P, the @ symbol, SS0 or W0RD. I'll use that as my password here. If it's accepted, you'll see this confirmation screen. If you don't meet the criteria or if you mistype the password, it will let you know and it will give you an opportunity to re-enter that. Every 90 days, Smart Money Manager is going to prompt you to update your password, and it can't be any of the last 4 of your previous passwords. So one thing you may want to do is maybe have like password 1, and then when it's time to change it, whatever your password is, maybe put a 2 on the end, or 3 or 4. That way you can kind of cycle through them. Now, keep in mind, this is just the very first time that you sign in. You set your own password, and you set your security question. So you can choose from some predefined security questions. And once you've done that, you're successfully logged into Smart Money Manager. If you can see in the middle, it shows the user CompTech is logged, and this big log on or log off button. Should I come in one day and get prompted to change my password, or if I forget my password, I can go through and reset my password simply by having my proper user ID, clicking Reset My Password, and answering my security question. If you enter the wrong password too many times, it's going to ultimately lock you out, and an admin will need to re-enable your account. So if you are getting an incorrect password message, after a couple tries, it's going to ask you if you want to reset your password, and that's usually the safest thing to do so you don't lock yourself out. Okay. So my security question has been accepted, and then I can go ahead and set another password if I need to. Okay. So this is the main user interface for Smart Money Manager. Up here on the left-hand side, we've got a bunch of different categories, and within those categories, we've got items that we can ring up or purchase. If you can imagine the workflow of Smart Money Manager to be that of very similar to an online transaction. So if you've ever gone to, say, Amazon.com or Walmart.com, in Walmart.com, they've got a bunch of different categories or departments like apparel, outdoors, electronics. And within those departments are individual items that you can purchase. So you wouldn't go to Walmart.com necessarily and buy all of the electronics. You would go to the electronics category and then choose an item within that category to purchase. So in its very simplest form, if I was logged in and I wanted to ring up earbuds, I could double click earbuds, and it's going to add a quantity of 1 to my shopping cart here. And it already knows a predefined price. Okay. So the workflow is we'll select the item. If I wanted 5 earbuds, I've got a keypad here. I can just highlight the item, choose 5, and just click enter, and it'll add a quantity of 5. Once I've added my items to my shopping cart, on the right-hand side, it will subtotal everything up for me, and I can choose my payment method and go ahead and check out. So that's the typical workflow for just a very simple over-the-counter sale. If at any time I make a mistake, I can highlight that item and click delete, and it'll just delete that from my shopping cart. Okay. So if we were to, if we wanted to start over, we could say delete all, and that'll clear everything from my shopping cart. So if you can imagine just a patron walking up to the counter and wanting to purchase a pair of earbuds, you don't necessarily need to scan their barcode or anything. You can just double-click earbuds, ask them how they wish to pay. If they wish to pay with cash, that's the default payment type. We could just hit the checkout button. Next, you'll want to enter the amount tendered. So this is the amount of money that the patron hands you. If they handed you a $10 bill, you would enter it as 10, or you could enter it as 10.00. Either are okay. And what will happen is it will tell you the change due. If enabled, we can email the receipt to the customer. I'm going to go ahead and say no here. And it's going to print a receipt out and open the cash drawer automatically. Now, there is an option if you don't want a receipt. You can check this box here. This is no receipt needed. And it will go through that same process, but it just won't print the receipt for you. Okay, it'll still tell you the change due, and it will still open the cash drawer. Okay. Next, we'll go through a very similar type of transaction. We'll choose check as our payment method. But I wanted to show you that, so we've got a whole bunch of different items here, and anything and everything that we could think of that you might accept money for should be in this list. If you find that there's something missing, just let us know. We can easily add it to this list. So we've got certain items that have a fixed cost, like earbuds. We know how much those are. But there's other items that may have a varying cost, such as if someone wants to provide a donation to the library. So when I click donations here, it's going to ask me to enter an amount. How much do I want to donate? Okay, so a cash donation, like I said, I rang one up. I can enter an amount. We can set a limit if you wanted to require a supervisor, let's just say for any transaction over $100 or $2,500 or whatever limit you wanted to. We can also set limits for waves, and we'll get to that when we cover the fine pay and the waive. So in this example, I'd like to ring this patron up for their $3 donation with a check payment type. Now, when paying with a check, we require that the user write the check for the exact amount of the sale. So we don't allow users to give us a check for $10 and expect cash in return. So we're not necessarily asking for an amount tendered, even though this screen looks like the cash one, but we do want the staff member to enter the check number here. And typically, if the check number starts with a 0, I usually leave that the leading 0 off. You can also put a note in here if you need to. However, just know that if you put a note or a name or anything like that, or a driver's license ID, anything that you put here is actually going to print on the receipt. So you don't want to put anything that you don't want that patron to see. Okay. So in this case, there's no change due, so we didn't see the change due. But the cash drawer would open and so on. Now there is a shortcut within the software, and that shortcut is Control plus Tab at the same time. And when you press that, it will open a little menu where you can either open the cash drawer if you just need to make change, or you can reprint previous tickets. Now when I say ticket, every transaction gets stored in the database and assigned a unique ticket number. Okay, the ticket number is going to start with what we call your point of sale or your Smart Money Manager ID. So this register in this case is 64401. Okay, 644 being the branch code, and 01 or the following digit will actually match the credit card terminal ID on that station. Okay, so that's what the beginning ticket number will start with, and then there'll be a sequential number like 2080, 2081. And if we need to reprint or if we need to refer back to a prior transaction, we can pull this up and we can see the details of any transaction. Now that ticket number may not seem very useful, but when we get into doing refunds or if we need to look up a prior transaction, we can tell by the ticket number where the transaction took place, if it was a credit card transaction, what terminal it was on, and so on. The next transaction will be for a credit or debit card transaction. So in this case, we'll add an item to our cart. Now, when I choose credit or debit, a couple important things to know about the credit card processing. One is the swiping of the card or the inserting, or if they were going to pay with Tap and Go, like Apple Pay or Samsung Pay. All of that is handled directly by the patron, by the customer. Okay, there's no way for a staff member to swipe a card or enter the card details right here at your station. So we want to kind of have a hands-off policy or approach to handling customers' credit cards. When you choose checkout and you're shown this screen, you want to direct the customer to go ahead and tap the screen on the PIN pad that's in front of them. So just like at the supermarket, the credit card terminal will be facing the customer. And they'll go ahead and tap the PIN pad. Next, it's going to ask them to confirm the amount.
Okay, we got a question.
Yes.
We do credit cards over the phone, through emails, because we have people like in other states, other countries that request items. How will we do this in conjunction with the keypad?
So there is a way to enable manual entry on the keypad. Okay, so when if you were taking it over the phone, then I would recommend that you be at the station or at the terminal and you have the customer on the phone. And basically, when you get to this screen where it asks you, so you would ring up your item in Smart Money Manager, you'd confirm the amount, and then at the point, the next screen is it's going to ask you to swipe, insert, or tap your card. There's 4 purple buttons on the right-hand side here. If you press the topmost purple button, you'll be prompted to manually enter the credit card number the expiration date, and possibly the billing zip code. Now, you just want to you want to be careful not to write down that credit card number, then go to the station and do it, because now if you do that, you're technically storing personal credit card data at your library, which means that you fall under a much stricter compliance level. Manually entered cards tend to also incur higher fees because they're considered card not present transactions. So when at all possible, if the card is present and you can use the card, you'll want to do that. And try to avoid writing down or printing out or photocopying a credit card number at all costs. So just getting back to this, the process is you select the credit debit and say check out. This screen comes up. You instruct the user to go ahead and tap the screen on the terminal. When they do that, it's going to retrieve the transaction from our payment gateway. It's going to ask the user to confirm the amount. They can either, it's a touch screen, so they can tap either the OK button on the screen or they can press the green button on the PIN pad. And then they'll be instructed, like I said, to swipe, insert, or tap their card if they have their phone or card supports wireless. And then at that point, we're going to go out and we're going to do two things. We do the process in which we process for payments is what's called a pre-authorization / post-authorization model. And what that means, it's very similar to when you use your debit card, let's say at a gas station. It first authorizes $1 to make sure that the card is good, and then you go ahead and you pump your gas, and then when you're finished, it does a post-authorization for the full amount that you've pumped. So the post-authorization is the actual charge to the user's card. Now, in this scenario, we would pre-authorize and post-authorize 25 cents. If the pre-authorization was successful, we automatically do the post-authorization. It's behind the scenes, and the user, if approved, will see this screen where they can sign electronically and complete the transaction. Now, once they do that, once they finish the transaction on the terminal, your screen, your transaction is going to finish automatically. So this will go away. It will print a receipt, and it will open the cash drawer for you to put a copy of the receipt in. 2 receipts are printed with credit card transactions, one for you to keep for your own records and one for you to give to the patron. Now, the reason I explained the pre-authorization, post-authorization model is because that may come into play when we start talking about fines, and I'll get back to that when we get into fines here in just a few moments. If for some reason the person's card is declined, or if it's expired, or if it fails for any reason, you'll see a message on the screen that says just error, transaction failed. You're not going to have any more information about why that transaction failed. If they'd like to try again, we're still within our checkout sale here. We can just check out again, and they can try that card again, or they can try a different card if they like. You don't have to start the whole transaction all over. I mean, in the credit card world, having a declined card is pretty common. So if that happens, you can, and the customer wants to know why it was declined, you can politely ask them to just call the number on the back of the card. They can usually get a live person on the phone pretty quickly, and the card issuer will be able to tell them why their card is being declined. Now, if you encounter several different patrons who repeatedly have cards being declined, that could be an indication that there's a problem somewhere. For example, I think yesterday TSYS, which is one of the world's largest credit card processors, had a regional outage and many cards were being declined. So if you do encounter something like that, let Gary know or let someone know. And if we know that there's any type of service interruption for any reason, we'll let you know. So so that is your basic, just someone walking up and needs to purchase something experience. More often than none, you're going to encounter people who want to pay fines and fees. So traditionally, before Smart Money Manager, your process for paying fines and fees would go something along the lines of a patron comes up to the desk, they want to pay their fines, you open their account in Sierra and scan their barcode, you let them know how much money they owe in fines and fees, they hand you their cash or credit, you apply the payment in Sierra, and then you would go over to probably a traditional cash register and ring it up, or you'd record that transaction in a log and maybe put the money in the cash drawer. In those two steps, so basically you're doing a transaction in Sierra, and then you're ringing it up separately at a register. Smart Money Manager kind of takes both of those steps and combines them into one. So once you start accepting payment for fines and fees and start using Smart Money Manager, you'll no longer need to go into Sierra, excuse me, and look up that patron's barcode or look up their fines and fees. So, for example, if I've got a card here, and up on the upper right-hand corner here, I've got card number. If I go ahead and scan my card, it's not like okay, 214. Okay, so when I go ahead and scan my card, Smart Money Manager is going to reach out to Sierra automatically, real time, and it's going to retrieve the list of fines and fees. So if you hover over fines, you can see more information, so you don't have to necessarily scroll back and forth. Okay, but what happens is this fines category expanded automatically and is populated on the fly with whatever fines and fees are associated with that barcode in Sierra. Now these become items that I can simply just double click and add to my shopping cart, just like a book sale item. Okay, I can choose, if I do it that way and I double click a particular item, I can pay either the full amount of that item or I could do a partial payment on that specific item. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, I want to pay the full amount of this one. And on this one, I'm going to do a partial payment of 25 cents. And then I'll go ahead and cash out here. So right now the user owes $19.86 and change. When I cash out this payment, now that won't come up on your screen, just so you know. That's just for the... Now, if I scan the card again here, you'll see that it'll retrieve all of my fines and the ones were paid real time so that the amount is lower. Now, if I wanted to pay all of my fines, I don't have to go ahead one by one and click all of these. There's a button here that says Pay All, and it will, in one click, add everything to my shopping cart. Now, there's... this scenario where the person's going to come in and maybe want to pay all of their fines and fees. And then there's the other scenario where they might have a lot of fines and fees and they just want to make a payment towards those fines and fees. So in this case, if someone comes in and they just want to make a $5 payment, at the bottom of the list of fines, you're going to see fine, full, or partial payment. And if you double click that, it will give you the option to enter just a dollar amount. And in this case, the item that gets printed on the receipt and the item that gets put in your shopping cart just shows partial payment. It doesn't show which fine the payment was applied to, but typically when we send these partial payments to Sierra, they'll be applied to the oldest fine forward. So we'll go ahead and cash out here. Okay. Any questions about simple fine payment? So a couple of things to note. With the latest version of Sierra that you guys are currently running, you want to make sure that you have the record closed in Sierra before you attempt a payment in Smart Money Manager. So if you have them both open, just be sure that you close out the record. Innovative has brought back the account lock, which I don't know if you guys remember back in the day with Millennium, you would have to close the record before you could do any third-party payment. That behavior is the same now with the latest version of Sierra. If for some reason a fine fails to be paid, or one or more fines fail to be paid, there'll be a big red alert message that comes up on the screen, and it will basically just say, alert, some or all of the fines cannot be paid. Please refer to the receipt for which fines were actually paid. Okay, so let's just say that we tried to pay 5 $1 fines, and I go ahead and I check out. If we were only able to pay 2 of those fines, you'll see an alert message. If the other 3 paid successfully, then the receipt will show that the charge should be $3, not $5. Okay. The reason this is important is when we do a credit card transaction. Earlier, I had said that we do it in 3 steps. It's a post or pre-authorization model where we do a pre-authorization and then a post-authorization. So if I were to pay this user's fines with credit or debit, in this scenario, we would do a pre-authorization for the full amount of $1,966.49. If that is approved, then we would connect to Sierra and try to pay each one of those individual fines. If for some reason we couldn't pay them all, we would only do a post-authorization for an amount for the fines that were successfully paid. If that makes sense. Now, because we do it in this fashion, what it does is it prevents us from actually charging the user or capturing the money for a fine unless we know for certain that Sierra has accepted that payment and cleared it successfully. Because we do it in this fashion, like I said, it makes sure that the fine is paid first before we actually take the money or charge the user. But if the user were to look at their phone, if they use, let's just say, a debit card, when you use a debit card, when the pre-authorization happens for the full amount, it shows on the user's online banking as a pending charge for that full amount. If the payment fails, let's just say none of the fines could be paid. So we got to this point, and let's just say Sierra went down, and the pre-authorization happened, but no fines could be paid. Then I would get the red alert screen, and the receipt would show total charge 0. But the user would see, and Smart Money Manager would do a post-authorization for an amount of 0. However, the user would see on their phone or their online banking a pending charge still for that full amount. And those authorizations will typically drop off. They'll never post to the user's account. Okay, so If a user says they were charged, you can tell them to look closely that it should be a pending charge and not a posted charge. The amount of time that it takes for those charges to drop off actually varies by card issuer. So depending on what bank they issued them the debit card, like for example, my TD Bank sometimes takes 5 days, but my Bank of America comes off in 2 days. I don't normally see it any sooner than 2 days because what happens is overnight your batch will settle, and then within 24 hours the batch settles. Within another 24 hours, money is deposited into the BPL bank account. After that process has happened, the authorizations are typically released. So it's not very common at all for the fine payments to fail, but it can happen. It does happen here and there, and users just need to know how it works so that you can explain to the customer that it was just an authorization and not an actual charge if they think that they've been charged. One other item to note, I don't know if you guys get a lot of large donations, but currently we have a transaction amount limit by credit card of $999. So if someone wanted to donate $1,500, you would need to do that. If they wanted to do that by credit card, you'd have to do that in 2 transactions. Now we are making, we do have plans to increase that limit to a larger amount, but I don't yet have an estimated date for when that will happen. Also, if you add fines to your cart and you delete a fine, it just deletes it from the cart, this transaction. It doesn't actually delete from the user's record in Sierra. Any questions about that process? Yeah. If you have the users, if you've retrieved the user's fines, and then for some reason you needed to correct something or change something in Sierra, and you're already in your transaction, if you click the fines refresh, it'll requery and update the list of available fines. And fines detail will do that same thing. All right. So I want to show you two different things that we can do with users' fines under this advanced fines option. So under advanced fines, excuse me, when I click that, it's going to pull up another window. Now there's 2 different functions here. On the left-hand side, I have the ability to select and choose which fine to pay, but I also have the ability to waive a fine. So if I want to we'll pick this World Book Encyclopedia fine and I choose waive, it's going to prompt me and ask me to define a reason why you're waiving this. Now there's some predefined ones here, and there's a couple extras that you can scroll through. If you'd like custom codes or custom reasons, that's fine. It's very easy for us to customize or how to remove certain ones from this list. So if I want to waive the top fine, and we'll just call it a correction, maybe it was incorrectly billed to that user, it will put it into my shopping cart here. And I can choose a different fine, for example. We can choose a different reason. And when I'm finished, I'll just click this done button to get back to my main user interface. So here you can see it added these 2 fines to my shopping cart with the price, okay? But when I go to check out, my price will actually just show 0. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and check out here. And the reason we do that is so that we can record the dollar amount of waived fines and fees. For reporting purposes later, we can look back and say, okay, this location has waived $1,000 this month in fines and fees, and this other location has waived $5,000 this month in fines and fees. Or if you're trying to put a value on how much over the course of a year you may waive. We keep track of that. So I'm going to go ahead and check out. So even though I put it in my cart and said waive, it won't actually come off of the user's account until I finish the transaction. So even though there's $0 due, I will just put $0, say OK, and you can see it went out and did the payments. And if I go ahead and scan this user's card, those amounts have come on. So waives are done through advanced fines. And I said that there were two different functions of advanced fines. The first one, of course, as I showed you, is waives. The second one is used if you have let's just say a parent comes in and they want to pay for their fines and they want to pay for their child's fines. So you want to be able to do pay multiple patrons' fines in one transaction. Maybe that person just brought one check with them, and you want to do it in one transaction. The process to do that is can be a little complicated, but I'll walk you through it the first time, and then we'll do it again. And I think it gets easier the more times you've gone through it. So let me scan the first user's card. It would be that once you scan the first user's card, so this user owes $4.90 on one fine. Before I put any of the fines in my shopping cart, what I'll do is I'll go to Advanced Fines. And on the right-hand side, we've got our primary patron. That was the first card number that I searched. Sam Jones owes $4.90. Now, I can scan additional barcodes here, and what will happen is any secondary patron patron card that I scan, those fines are going to be listed and appended to this list on the left-hand side. So I'll go ahead and scan my second user and click search. And you can see their fines are listed here. And I can go ahead and scan a third user, a fourth, a fifth. You can go ahead and scan as many cards as you need to. The idea is to scan all of the cards, and let's retrieve everybody's fines that we're paying and get them in the shopping cart, and then we can go ahead and make our payment. So if you notice, once I scanned a second card, I don't have the ability anymore to do a waive. At this point, I can just add them all to my shopping cart or remove them all from my shopping cart. Now, once I've got everybody's cards scanned and all of their fines in my shopping cart, from here, I can pick and choose different ones. If I didn't want to pay that one, I can just remove that from my order. Remove that one here. And then continue on and check out. So I'm not going to pay these users' fines right now so that we can continue to use them. But I just want to go through that process with you real quick one more time. So we scan the first user's card. We'll go to Advanced Fines. We'll scan any additional users' cards. We'll select Pay All to add them all to our shopping cart. Click Done to exit out of this window, and then choose our payment method and check out. Now, you don't have to do it that way. If it's easier for you to ring up the first patron and then ring up the second patron in separate transactions, that's fine too. Either way would be okay. If the user only has one check, then that's the unique scenario where you may want to do it with advanced fines and do it all in one transaction. That might be like probably one of the most complicated transactions within the product. Are there any questions at this time?
It's just a really simple question. Is there just, like, people oftentimes come in off the street and they just want change for a parking meter. Is there just a button you can hit that opens the door so they can make change?
To give them change? Yes. The control tab.
Yeah. Control tab brings up this menu, and you just hit open cash drawer, and it'll pop open the cash drawer. Okay. So talking about, we're just going to cover refunds, so I can show you how that's done. But typically, you want to follow your existing refund policy. So if that means that certain refunds go through your business office, then you want to funnel them that same way. But there might be, we use the term refund and the term void kind of interchangeably. For example, let's say I ring up this donation as check instead of cash. I'm thinking I was on cash. Now I've completed this transaction, and at the end of the day, if I didn't catch it, it's going to mean that I've got $5 more in my drawer, and I don't have a check. I'm $5 less on my check total. So in this scenario, the appropriate thing to do would be to void or cancel that last transaction and re-ring it up the proper way. Okay, so refund and void can be used interchangeably in our application. In order to do a refund or to cancel a transaction, when at all possible, we want to know the ticket number for that refund. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that the transaction actually occurred and we're not just arbitrarily refunding money or items that weren't actually purchased either at the library. So if the user has their receipt, you can read the ticket number from their receipt. If it's something in the case like we're just voiding the transaction, you can retrieve that ticket number by pressing Control Tab. So 64401 2085. Now I'm going to go ahead and just click Refund and enter that transaction ID. And you'll see when I do that, we found the transaction. We know it's a donation for $5, and the primary payment method, which was check, is enabled. Okay, so by clicking Finish Refund, that will go ahead and void that out, and we can put that same check number in so we know to void it. Now, we do keep track of how much of each item is sold. So when you're doing a refund, it might ask you if you want to return that item to inventory. The typical example I use is if someone, let's just say, bought a pair of earbuds and then they plugged them in and they didn't work. Now they want to return them and get their money back. If you can resell that item, if it was broken, you would say, no, don't return to inventory because you can't resell it. But if there's nothing wrong with them and you could resell them, then you would say, yes, return to inventory. Now, because the original payment type was check, I did have the option for check or cash. With check refunds, if it's the same day, then there's a likelihood that check is still in your drawer, and you can either void it or return it back to that patron. If it's a refund that's happening on a different day, if the original transaction was yesterday, then that check is already on its way to the bank. So there's not going to be a way for me to give that check back to that user. So the cash option is there if you needed to refund that user in cash. If you're doing a credit card refund, okay, let's find them. If you're doing a credit card refund, two things need to be true in order for it to be successful. One is you have to have a ticket number. We are not allowed to just add money or refund money back to a person's credit card unless we can prove that the transaction occurred on that person's credit card. So So the ticket number does that. The ticket number allows us to retrieve that transaction and the details surrounding the credit card portion of it. The second thing that needs to be true is the person needs to use the same card that they used for the original purchase. Okay, so if no receipt is available and you can't retrieve the ticket number somehow, and I can show you how you can search for transactions, and there's other ways you may be able to find it, then I would suggest you probably just route that refund through your business office. If you're doing a refund and no ticket number is available, like I said, you can't do the credit card refund if no ticket is available. But if I select no ticket is available, it's going to ask you to enter the library card number. So we want to associate a second person with this transaction. So we already know the staff member who signed in, and now we want to know the patron's barcode. And if the patron isn't a library card holder, then maybe have your supervisor put their barcode in so that we know that there's two people involved in this refund. The reason that's important is because we can't actually prove that there was a transaction with this user in the first place. So nothing would stop someone from saying, okay, book sale for $10, and then ringing it out as a refund. And at the end of the day, your drawer would balance, even though there was $10 taken out of it. Okay. So if there's ever any question about a particular refund, then we know based on the transaction, the two people that were involved in that, if more details are needed.
Did I lose you, Patrick?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay.
I accidentally hit the mute button. Sorry about that.
All right.
So with a traditional cash register, at the end of the day, you would typically run two reports, an X report and I think a Z report. And basically, one of them gives you a list of your transactions and tells you how much money should be in the cash drawer. And then the other report says, okay, of all the money that's in the cash drawer, how much of it is print and copy, or how much is fines, and how much is merchandise, and so on. So we have two similar reports, and basically what you want to do is we have one that's a form that you'll fill out, and it basically will help you in determining whether or not your cash drawer is over or under, and that's called a cash drawer count report. So as long as I'm logged in, I can click the reports button.
Oh, you did it.
And you can log in with your username and password here. And you'll have access to these reports here. The first one we want is cash drawer count. And we'll select our location. And your logins won't see all of the locations. You'll just see the ones at your branch. Now we can choose all terminals, so if you have more than one, you can count all of the drawers together if you wanted to. But if you count them individually, if there is something that's off, it'll be a lot easier to try and pinpoint. And you'll know basically which terminal you're on based on the branch ID and which terminal number you are. We've got history or current. So if your procedure is that you count the drawer and generate your reports at the end of the day, then you're going to want to choose current for current day's transactions. If the money just gets locked up in the safe and the following morning a staff member comes in and counts the money, then you want to choose history and select the date range for the previous day. Okay. So we're going to count the money for today. So I'm going to select current. And when I click on, which one did I choose here? Okay. So basically this form comes up. It's a full form at the bottom, and it shows my cash purchases of $22.45, my refunds, and basically telling me that I should have $12.45 in cash in the drawer. Now, if I open the drawer each morning, say with $75, so that I've got money for change or whatever that amount is, I want to enter that here, because when I count my drawer, that $75 plus $12.45 should be there. One other thing I forgot to mention about refunds. If you do a refund, you want to make sure that you hold on to that refund receipt and keep that in the drawer, because this report is going to show you that you should have refunds totaling $10 or a check refund totaling $5. So you want to have that receipt to reconcile, to make sure that that's correct. All right, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. So once I enter my starting amount, I'll go ahead and start counting the drawer. So as you count your 1s, 5s, 10s, 20s, you'll go ahead and fill in the amount of each that you have. So if I count my drawer, I start with 1s, and I've got 10 1s. I'll go ahead and put 10 here. If I have 1 5, I'm going to put 1 here. I want the quantity of each, not the dollar amount of each. Okay? And so on. So I'll go ahead and I have 2 10s. And maybe we'll say 3 20s. Excuse me. And I'll go ahead and do that while I count my quarters, nickels, dimes, and pennies. Once I've got this all filled in and I've counted everything, I'll scroll back up here and I'll say View Report. And what it's going to do is it's going to do all of the math calculations and generate this nicely formatted report. And basically, based on the amount of each denomination that I've entered into the form, according to that information, I would be over $7.55. Okay. Now, it's not if you're over or you're under. Typically, the first thing I do is let me just do a recount. So if you recount and you realize that you made a mistake, maybe only had 3 $1 bills instead of 10, it's not a big deal. You can just correct it and click Review Report, and it will regenerate that report for you. So we just want to make sure that this is an accurate representation of the actual amount of money that was in the drawer. Now, when handling cash, being over a few cents or under a few cents is pretty common. It happens. You're going to break open a roll of quarters, and they're going to go flying everywhere, and you're not going to be able to get them back. Or you might forget to give someone their change before they walk out the door. In any event, when you print this report out, there's a place for you to enter the actual amount of money that you're enclosing, for you to sign your name. If there's a second person counting it or confirming it, there's a place for them to sign their name. But most importantly, there's this notes field. So if there is a discrepancy and you have any information to add to why it's over or under, like you forgot to give so-and-so back their change, or the roll of quarters was too short, that's great, because those notes, explain the difference and will save a lot of time for the business office trying to figure out why something didn't balance. So this report, once it's generated, if you look up here in the upper left, there's a little print icon. And when you do that, it's going to download this as a PDF file that you can open or email or print out. So you can print this basically to any printer that you have installed on your computer. Okay. So generating this and printing this report and enclosing it with the money and the checks and the credit card receipts and refund receipts, that will be a daily process that you should be doing. If you don't create deposits like over the weekend, that's fine. You can do the history when you come in on Monday and you just have the till running all weekend. You can select the date range from Friday to Monday. And then count your drawer. So the second report that I want to tell you, so this basically just tells us if we're over or under and how much we should have. It doesn't give us the breakdown that we want for how much of that money was book sale money or donations or fine and fee money. The second report that I want to show you is the SMM Activity 2 report. And when you run this report, it's going to give you those additional details that we need. Let me go ahead and just include today. Now, on this report, I've got the option for detail or summary. If I choose detail, it's going to give me the barcode that's associated, if there is, with that transaction. We don't necessarily need that level of detail. We're just going to choose summary. So this report will give me a breakdown basically of my fines, if it was a partial payment, if it was a replacement cost, if there was multi-pay. Let me see. Actually, let me check one other thing here. There's which category? Hey, Gary, I'm clear on one thing. Did you need the fine breakdown, like dissolved money that for items billed in Sierra? Do they go? Does that all go to one accounting bucket, as far as
for fine?
Okay, then let me do this report. I think this might be a little bit better. This is basically your merchandise category report, and it gives you a breakdown as well. I think it's a more nicely formatted report. It gives you totals for each, whether your payment type, and then your subtotals by category. So book sale items are categorized: donations, supplies, anything that was unspecified, and then totals everything up for you. If you don't see an item or category that's on this list, it's simply because we didn't sell any of those today. So we didn't have any meeting rooms booked.
And right here, let me point out something. You see under the items, unspecified items, where you see
yes.
my name and the event staff. That's similar to what you were asking me before, I believe. If you got a speaker's fee or something like that, you could add yourself as a line item, or however you want to state that. Okay.
Well, will we do obituaries and articles separate?
Yeah, that will be a line item.
Okay, thanks.
And it'll have its own item code. Okay. Okay, Patrick.
All right. So yeah, those two reports are the key ones that you want to generate with every time that you do your reconciliation of the drawer. Now, there are other reports here. A lot of these are the same data. It's just formatted or focused a little bit differently. One that I wanted to show you for sure is, so if you do have a discrepancy and you don't know why, there's the transactions report, and that will give you a breakdown of all of your transactions along with the details of each. So we'll do demo 2 for current, whether or not we wish to include waves, and we want the detail in this scenario. So this will give you by ticket number, the staff member, whether it was a sale or a refund, the payment method, and so on. So this could be helpful in, like earlier, we were trying to figure out if we rang up a $5 item with a check instead of cash. So here you can see that we had a $5 check sale or a cash sale, $5 cash sale, and a refunded check. So this could be helpful in finding a transaction or ticket number. There's also a transactions search report down here. And here there's some criteria that you can choose. The one that would be most helpful, I think, is if someone's like trying to return, and most of your, I think, refunds are going to be like lost items that are paid for, and then the person finds it and they return it. So those typical transactions will be associated with that person's barcode. So if I scan by account or ID number, it'll pull up any transaction that we did for that user. And this will be an ongoing running history for that user from the time you start using Smart Money Manager on. And from here, I can see the ticket number, what was paid. Excuse me. And then, if you're curious, there's other reports like Waves, or if you wanted to know how many of a particular item was sold, there's inventory sold reports that could be run over a period of time. Those are helpful if you're maybe if you're trying to reorder something like earbuds or USB drives. You can look back and generate a report and see, okay, well, we've sold 50 of them in the last month, and that should give you a better gauge on how many to order. But all of that data will be there at your fingertips. But for today's training, primarily we just wanted to focus on the cash drawer account and the merchandise category. The merchandise category. Or if you prefer, the merchandise category and the SMM Activity 2 are pretty much identical reports. The SMM Activity 2 report just gives you a little bit more information about the breakdowns of fine types. Are there any questions? Or? So, well, thank you if there's no questions. If anything comes up after today's training, please feel free to reach out to Gary or myself. What I would really like for you guys to do is we've gone ahead and created accounts for all the staff members at Central. If you wanted to try to log in to Smart Money Manager, it should be on, we installed it on the computers yesterday. You can go ahead and log in, make sure that you can set a password, that you set your security question, and if you want to run some test transactions, that's fine. Just let us know and we can clear them from the database so that they're not throwing off any balances. But anything that you do before you decide to go live that day, we'll clear those transactions out. Just keep in mind, if you do run through a full credit card transaction, that it will actually charge your card. The merchant account's live and active, so are the terminals. If you do go that far, you can certainly go through the refund process and refund it back to your card, should you need to.